Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you all for joining me for today's Wednesday webinar. It is straight up top of the hour, noontime here in the Midwest in what is lovely, beautiful Minneapolis today. And we will get started with TimeSolv's Wednesday webinar. This is our tips and tricks to get the most out of TimeSolv. Once again, this is Scott Clayson. I'm the marketing director here at TimeSolv, and I am, as always, ecstatic to have you joining us today so that we can show you some of the things about TimeSolv you may not be familiar with. So let's talk about a few details before we get going. Just a reminder that everyone, I believe, should be on mute. So while you can hear me talking, this is not a back and forth type session. There is a Q&A icon you should see at the bottom of your screen where you can ask questions of me. I do ask only that we wait until we're near the end of the webinar before asking questions, because we find, again, that most times, you may have a question in which I actually will answer it perhaps 30 seconds or a minute later or whatever it might be. So we'll reserve that for the end. This should take probably at most, I'm looking at probably about 45 minutes for today's webinar. I don't think we're going to go the full hour in the things that I'm going to show you. So again, just for those who have not sat in on a Wednesday webinar before, we do this the second Wednesday of every month. And as those of you who are the owners or administrators of your TimeSolv account know, we send out a tip of the week email every week, usually on a Monday. I didn't get this week's out until Wednesday, mainly because our normal writer of all of our tips of the week is on maternity leave. So we're kind of playing catch up in making sure that those get sent out on Monday. So we try to send those out on Monday, but for sure, at least once a week, you'll have a tip of the week that comes out. And the Wednesday webinar is essentially just a look back at the 4 previous tips of the week that you may have read about. And this is your opportunity to see them in action and ask questions about them if you'd like, and just get a little bit more detail about the tips and tricks that we send out, because we know it's super important for everyone to stay current with new features in TimeSolv, features about TimeSolv you may not have been aware of, that you may have learned it in training when you first started using TimeSolv, but if you don't use that particular feature, you're going to forget about it, or you may remember that feature was in place, but you can't remember exactly how to execute it because it's been so long. We totally understand that. So we always want to make sure that this is, well, the equivalent of I know lawyers have to go through CLEs, receive CLE credits. This is sort of like your TimeSolv CLE credit to learn all the various things about TimeSolv you may not have known about. I generally get these tip of the week topics. We talk directly to our support staff every week, and we just take a pulse and find out, what are people asking questions on? What are they calling in about? What are they emailing about features with TimeSolv that we already have or they may not know how to do? What's bubbling to the surface? And that's what drives the topics that we cover in these in these Wednesday webinars and the tip of the week. Okay, so that being said, I assume everyone can see my screen. I did remember to share this time. A couple of months ago, I forgot to share my screen during this webinar, which was incredibly embarrassing. So you can see my screen, hopefully, that the intro slide. Let's talk about our 4 topics we're going to cover during this session today. First, we're going to review about how to attach expense receipts to your invoices. If you didn't know, when you are creating expense entries in TimeSolv that are going to be passed on and placed on an invoice, you can attach the receipt for that expense to the entry and then have it be attached to the invoice itself. So we'll show you how to do that in the TimeSolv browser, and then I have a sneak peek for you on the coming very, very soon and already available for those who use Android phones. We have a new mobile app that's coming out, and one of the things you'll be able to do is attach expense entry receipts directly from your phone. So we're really excited about that new feature. It's going to be rolling out. So I'll tease you a little bit there. Our second topic then is going to be the different ways that you can customize the appearance of your invoices. And there's not, we purposefully, there isn't a ton of flexibility in your invoice appearance, partly because the way the invoice is aggregated together, the time entries, expense entries, all the information is, there are limitations. We can't just, have people choosing every font under the sun that they want for their invoices, because the layout would really break essentially. But there are several things we do have in place to allow you to customize to a certain degree the appearance of the invoices that get generated in TimeSolv. So I'll show you how we do that. Third then topic today is about, and I cover this topic a lot, probably once a quarter, we talk about contact management in TimeSolv and how to make sure you're not duplicating contacts, how the hierarchy of contacts flows between at the client level versus the matter level, how you have different contacts appear on the invoice, and so on and so forth. We feel like we have one change in place that we implemented a couple of weeks ago that we're hoping avoid that duplication of contacts, which seem to happen quite a bit between the client levels and the matters below those clients. So we'll talk about that update, and I'll show you how that looks. And then another last topic we'll cover today is about creating matter plans. We have, and a lot of people don't realize this, a very healthy and robust tools to allow you to lay out the matter or project plans for a client ahead of time, break them down into different phases and tasks, assign those tasks to specific individuals at your business, at your firm. And you can even take it one step further and create a budget for those tasks to get really granular in making sure that everything, that all the work that you want to do to help, resolve a project or a matter for your client is set up ahead of time and budgeted for. So I'm not going to get into super detail about the budgeting part, but just in general, how to create matter plans and how to manage those matter plans we'll talk about in today's webinar. So that being said, let's get started and let's talk about the first topic here, which is attaching expense receipts to your invoices. We'll talk about where to do it in the web-based version of TimeSolv, which most of you, are used to using for creating expense entries. And then I'm going to make an attempt here. I haven't done this in a webinar before, to actually share my mobile phone to show you how it will look, and it's very simple how it will look in the mobile environment, the new mobile environment that's coming out. And then you have the ability to choose whether you actually do want to attach those receipts to an invoice or not, and that is by manipulating the billing template. So let's go ahead and jump in, open up my TimeSolv account here, my demo account that I have. And I'm already on the expense screen. As you can see, very similar, just like the time entry screen. I'm going to create a expense entry here. And again, I would choose, whichever client and matter I want to make a expense entry for. You can put in all the various information here. The quantity was 1, let's say. The price was, let's say it's $45, whatever it might be. And then I can make my description, whatever that might be here. And then right here underneath here is where we actually can choose the file that we want, the receipt essentially. And now at this point in time, the receipt obviously has to be on your computer to choose it. And as you hover over the button here that says choose file, you'll notice that it's telling you that you can attach GIF, JPEG, PNG, or PDF files. Those are the only those are the 4 formats that you can upload. So in other words, you can't choose a Word document, you can't choose a PowerPoint or anything along those lines. And then the max file size for a receipt is 10 megabytes, which I would be shocked if you had anything bigger than that. If you take a picture, of a receipt and it's bigger than 10 megabytes, you need to knock it down. That's way too big. You don't need to attach or have something that big. So you would simply just hit choose file. You navigate to wherever the receipt is on your computer. In this case, I have a dummy receipt, for example, and I hit, I just choose it and I hit save and new. And it's that simple. And then the receipt is attached and it will be put on the invoice. And if you click on that little, let me do that again to make sure you guys saw that. If you actually want to view the receipt, you can come over here to this little magnifying glass icon. You click on it and it's going to generate this is the picture. I essentially took a picture of a receipt. Okay. So if it's a PDF, it'll show the PDF. If it's, an image like this, it'll show the image and so on. Here's what I'm going to attempt to do to show you. Like I mentioned at the top, we have a new mobile app that is currently was just released into the Google Play Store for Android users. It is currently under review for iPhone users. So Apple is doing their iOS preview. For those of you that are somewhat unfamiliar with how mobile apps reach those stores, Google Play, you can submit an application to the Google Play Store and it will be available within a day or so, even within hours. There really is no vetting process on that mobile application. In the iOS environment, for those who have iPhones, there's a much longer process to have a mobile app appear in the App Store, and it usually takes a couple of weeks for Apple to approve the actual mobile app. So we've submitted both the mobile app the new mobile app to the App Store for Apple and to Google Play. And so it's now in Google Play. We haven't made the big announcement on that yet because we want to wait until both are available. So this is sort of a sneak peek for those of you who are on the who are on this webinar. This new mobile app is now available in Google Play. And let me hopefully share my phone so I can show you what it looks like to attach your receipt. So I'm going to attempt now to share my screen. And by screen, I mean my mobile phone. And this is actually, there we go. You guys all should see my, I'm on an iPhone, as you can see. Hopefully my wife doesn't send me an embarrassing text message while I'm doing this. But I have the beta version of the new mobile app for the iOS. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the TimeSolv mobile app. I'm going to tap on that little, this is the technical term, hamburger icon in the upper left-hand corner there. And I'm going to do an expense entry instead of a time entry. Then I'm going to tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner. And this is where I would fill in all the information that I have that I want to create an expense entry for on my mobile device. Very similar to what you see on a regular time entry or expense entry screen. But more importantly, at the bottom here, you see I have the attach receipt button. I simply would tap that, and I can either take a photo right there. I can literally turn on my camera and take a photo, or I can browse my photo library to a picture that I have already taken. And then once you have that image uploaded, you would simply hit save. And now, just like in the web-based TimeSolv expense entry creation, you would have that new expense entry with the receipt. So a great new feature that we're rolling out. If you're an Android user, you will need to delete your old TimeSolv mobile app if you have it. This is a brand new mobile app, completely different from the old one. We're not just updating the old one. This is completely different, built on a whole new platform. And so you go to Google Play, you search for TimeSolv, you'll find the new one, download it, log in with your login credentials and so on, and you will be able to start attaching your expense receipts as needed. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, go back to sharing. Whew, I'm glad that worked okay, where I could share my mobile app. It was the first time I've ever done that on a webinar, so it went off without a hitch. And like I said, when the announcement comes, when we get the word that it's in the Apple Store, the App Store, that's when we'll do the big announcement to everybody. But if For those of you the special few who are on this webinar, if you're an Android user, you are set to roll now. So by default now, when you create an invoice, the expense entry receipt is going to appear on the invoice. If you don't want it to appear, then you would want to modify the template that you're using. So you would go under Invoices to Settings, and under the Flexible Templates tab here, you select, by default, you have the flexible billing template that comes out of the box here. If you just simply click on one to edit, whichever one you have. And under the expense tab, by default, this down here in the left-hand column at the bottom, second from the bottom, we have the item attach receipts to invoice, and that's automatically checked. So if for whatever reason you don't want to attach the receipts to the invoice to show your client, you would simply uncheck that box, and it's not going to then appear on the invoices. So pretty basic, simple stuff. So that's how you would go about modifying it if you need be. Okay, so let's move on now to our next topic. And that is, speaking of the billing template, we're going to talk about a little bit about how to customize the invoice appearance. There's really 3 things that you can do to customize the appearance. And that is the size of the font, how the text is aligned for the time or expense entry descriptions, and the line spacing between the descriptions, the time and expense entry descriptions. Okay, so how do you modify those? Where do you modify those? We're going to head right back, stay in here to our billing template area. And you would, again, if you want to, we suggest that you don't do a lot of modification to the flexible billing template default that came with TimeSolv. But if you want to make various modifications, make a copy of it and then rename it, whatever you want to rename it. Like maybe you want to rename it the larger font billing template because you have clients who want it in a bigger font, whatever it might be. But to edit any of the existing templates you have, you would click on the template itself like I just did. And under the global settings tab here, you'll notice that under this time and expense category, you can have changed the font size, and by default, it's small. So you have basically small, medium, large. And what that is equivalent to is 9-point, 10-point, and 11-point font size. And that's really the only options you have. Otherwise, going back to, as I said at the beginning, our developers have learned that having too much flexibility in how you modify the invoice appearance can really kind of break the layout of the appearance under the hood and how these invoices get aggregated together to present the final invoice that you're used to seeing. We had to have some limitations. But we do want to show you that you can change the font size to small, medium, large. The other thing that was a request that we put into place was the ability to justify or not justify the description fields, the time and expense entry descriptions. Check the box, it's going to justify it. I believe, oops, sorry about that. I believe, and let me double check something here. I just want to check one thing on the default. And I believe, yeah, by default, the justify description is going to be turned on. So if you don't want to have your text be justified, both left, right, justified, you would just simply uncheck this box. The last thing that you can modify in the appearance of the invoice itself is under both time and expense tab here, and how you want your time entries and your expense entries to appear. You'll notice a checkbox in the bottom left column here. It says extra space between rows. Extra space between rows. If you check that, that will place a small bit of extra white space between multiple time entry or expense entry descriptions on the invoice. So let me kind of show you how that looks in reality. Let me take a look at a draft invoice here. let's take a look at this one, this August webinar one. And I'm going to click on the dollar amount as we do to edit, and I'm going to go ahead and edit the billing template. Well, first of all, let's just look at it. Hang on, let me just double check. Let me get too carried away. We're at small font size. We're at checking the box extra space between rows for the time entries. And I do have, I believe, multiple time entries here. I do. So I'm going to download this invoice. And it's going to open up for me in Adobe. There we go. I close out I have some old ones open here. Okay, so if we scroll down here, you can see I have multiple time entries, and there is a bit of white space between these two entries. Okay, it kind of gives a nice little break. It's not a ton, but it does give it a little break to break up especially if you have a description that has a large volume of text. So let's go ahead and modify that. And I'm going to go back to the General tab. Let's edit the billing template. And for the time entry, let's uncheck this box. Hit update. Let's download that invoice again so you can see the difference. And if you take a look now, you can see, you know, if we go back and forth, this is the one I just did, no extra white space. This one there is. It's not a huge difference, but from a readability point of view, it's probably enough to make a difference for you. So just so you're aware of that. And then let's go ahead and take a look at what would happen. Let's go ahead and edit again. And let's go into a large font that justifies the description, for example. And then again, let's download the next draft version of it with those changes so you can just see how it would look. Okay, so you can see how much bigger the text looks here than the small font. You might like that, you might not like that, but that's how it'll look. Same thing with, you can see I've justified the description, so it's justified both left and right. Some people really don't like that. They want to have the justification turned off and have it read a little bit more naturally, I suppose. So these are the different ways that you can modify how the invoice will appear. So this is the small font, no justifying on the description, and I have the no extra space between. You know, this one is the large font, the 11-point font, basically, with justification turned on. So those are different ways that you can modify your templates if you need to. I'm going to go back to, I personally don't like that large font, and I don't want to justify the description, and I do want to have that extra white space in my billing template. Okay, so those are the different ways that we can modify the appearance of our invoice. I know it's somewhat limited, but there's, again, good reasoning behind that in how the invoices are put together. Okay, let's talk about tip number 3 now. And this is what we're hoping to avoid, a common question that comes into our support staff, and that is the management of contacts. And previously, it wasn't understood that if you have a contact associated at the client level, when you create a matter then for that client, by default, if you don't do anything with the contact at the matter level, it's going to drive down the client level contact, and that is what it will appear on the invoice. And let me show you what that means and how it looks different now. I'll walk through this somewhat slowly, so it's, I'm hoping, easy to understand. I'm going to create a whole new client. And this is our May 20, or this is May, this is June, June 2019 webinar. So this is my new client. And often, naturally, when you create a new client, you're going to want to create a new contact for that client, the main contact. So let's go ahead and do that. So the main contact, let's see, I'm here in Minnesota. I'm a big Minnesota Twins baseball fan. So this is Kirby Puckett. I would put in all the various information, office phone, cell phone, email address, mailing address, all the stuff I would want to normally have for a contact. And I'm going to hit save. And so you see that there is Kirby Puckett is the main contact, not associated with any matters because we don't have any matters here anyway. It doesn't, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and now create a matter for the June 2019 webinar. So I clicked on the matter tab. I'm going to click on new matter here, and I'm going to call this matter A. Now when I click on this is where the changes happen. When I click on the contacts tab now, previously you wouldn't see anything right here, this default invoice contact. You would just see, looks like there's no contact associated at the matter level when in fact there was. In this case now, the change we've updated is that it's going to show you who is the default invoice contact. As of right now, it's Kirby Puckett, who is the main contact at the client level. So you at least can see this person is at this level here. And they're the main invoice. This is, if we create an invoice today for this matter, Kirby Puckett is the name on here. Now, if you want a different name, like because maybe you're doing a bunch of work for a large company where you're doing lots of different matters and each matter has a different contact who should receive the invoice, then you can go ahead and create that contact for specifically the matter level down here like you could previously. But we're hoping now by displaying this bit of information that who the default invoice contact is, you won't feel compelled. People were feeling compelled, oh, I don't see anybody here at the matter level, so I'm going to create a new contact again called Kirby Puckett, and that's where the duplication process would happen. We're hoping that being able to see this, that will change things. And I also want to review once again that we know there's oftentimes you might have a main contact for the client level, but the client main contact doesn't want to be the person receiving the invoice. They're the president of the company, or whoever. The invoice, they tell you, should be sent to my bookkeeper. So how do I make sure my bookkeeper's name is on the invoice and not my name? Here's how we go about doing that. You could do it at the matter level if you'd like, but let's go back up and say the client has said, every matter that you're going to do with me, I want you to send it to my accountant. We're going to go back up to the client level. I'm going to go back to contacts. I'm going to create a new contact for the accountant, and this is going to be Kent Herbeck. Instead of being labeled as the main contact, they're going to be labeled as optional invoice. They're the ones who are getting the invoice. Get all their information in here, hit save. Now you see we have two contacts at the client level. Kent Herbeck, who's the optional invoice, and Kirby Puckett, who's the main. Kent is going to be the one getting the invoice. TimeSolv always looks first and says, is there any contact associated with this client who is labeled as optional invoice? Yes or no? If it's no, it's going to go back up and say, do we have any contact who's labeled as the main contact type? So how's this change things at the matter level? Well, it is going to change things. If I go down here now to matter A, and I go to contacts, guess what? Kent Herbeck now is the default invoice contact because I've labeled them as the optional invoice person. So they're the ones who are going to be getting the invoice sent to them, whose name is going to appear on the invoice, and so on and so forth. So I hope that makes sense. And if it needs to change at the matter level itself, you can. You can still do that down here. But again, now when you're viewing your contacts at the matter level, and I just want to keep pounding this home, you now at least be able to see currently who's the person that's going to appear on the invoice, who's the default contact, and it's going to show you here. Then you can make whatever modifications you need to make, but we're hoping that you won't end up making duplicates, creating duplicates as often as it was happening previous. So we're excited to have that rolled out. Okay, let's talk is this our last topic already? Yeah, we are. On to our last topic, and that is creating matter plans. And where you do that at the matter level, how you can go about managing that. We'll talk about assigning professionals to matter plans. We'll talk about how you can create phases, tasks, and milestones, and you can save those as templates to reuse for other matters in which you're doing the same exact work, which for a lot of law firms, that is the case. And then we'll talk briefly about how you can actually budget time, fees, and expenses for each task that you create in your matter plan. So let's stay in this particular matter now that we're here. We're in matter A for our June 2019 webinar. If I'm going to create a matter plan, I first need to determine who am I going to be assigning specific people in my firm to work on this plan, on the tasks I'm going to create in this plan. If the answer is yes, the first thing you want to do when you're in this matter is go to this assignments tab and determine who amongst all my professionals are going to be assigned here. And you would simply come over here and say, yeah, I'm going to have Doug Cosby, Tony Hill, and Dennis Thurmond work on this particular matter. And I'm going to hit Save Assignments now. Then I would come over right next door, the next tab over, to the matter plan. And this is where you would say, is there going to be a professional assignment required for these tasks that we're going to be creating or not? So you can check or uncheck them as you see fit. And once you do that, you can determine, is it going to be required then on time and expense entries that they choose the task they're working on. You don't have to have that turned on. So you could create tasks in which there isn't a requirement to assign it to a professional. But in this case, we're going to turn those back on. When you turn one on, it turns when you turn the professional assignment required on, it automatically designates that the time and expense entries, that's a required field to fill out what plan task are they working on. So now we can start, just fresh here and say, hey, let's create the different phases. This is just project management. And this is just matter planning. You want to create, what are the different phases of work I have to do? Maybe it's discovery work is your first phase. Then it's, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't articulate very well, I suppose, how the different phases you might have. But let's say you have a intake phase, and then you have different tasks you have to accomplish during the intake of a new client or a new matter that you're working on. And then you have the discovery phase, and then you might have the actual work, whatever you want to call that, and maybe there's a deposition phase, whatever it could be. But this is just a way of chunking. Phases are just a way of chunking the tasks you're going to create, so that it's not just a long laundry list of tasks that aren't terribly organized. So we're just going to categorize. So let's just call this new phase, this is our intake phase. And you see we have, it's just labeled here. There's nothing particularly special about it, but now we're actually going to create task. So we're going to say, hey, here's a new plan task. It's under the phase called intake. And this is going to be client discovery, whatever we want to call it. And you can give a description. You can give it a start date. We're starting this on today. Actually, we're going to start it in a week. We're starting on Monday. And we want this particular task to be completed by Tuesday the 18th. We don't have any dependencies right now. You could set some default task codes if you're using ABA task codes, subtask codes, expense codes, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to hit save, and you can see now I have a bunch of information about this task. I can do a lot of things here now with it. If I click on this little person icon, and as you see, as you hover over it, you see that this is telling you who's going to be the professional assignment for this task. If I click on it, it's going to bring me up the 3 professionals that I assigned to the matter. And I can say choose one of the 3, or all 3 if you want. So you can do that here. You can also click on the name of the task itself. And if you go under, again, you can edit everything that you created initially. You can go into this budget and actuals and assign professionals here as well, same place. Once you assign the professionals, well, but let's back up, and I will talk a little bit. I'm not going to get in the greatest detail here, but you can then also, for this specific task of client discovery, how many hours are we going to budget towards this specific amount of work? Or how many, what's our fees going to be? And again, it could say we're not going to spend more than $500 on this particular task. So you could have a combination of people working on it, but you're going to say if their fees combine to go over $500 of billable time, then that's exceeding our budget. Or same thing, if this is going to be an expense, if you know there's expenses involved with this task, you could enter what's our budget here. Now, the nice thing too is you can check this box over here. It says prevent exceeding, so that if you exceed the hours budgeted or the fees budgeted or the expenses budgeted, you literally won't be able to make those time entries or the fees that you go over or the expenses. The system will lock you out basically. If you leave these boxes unchecked and you make a time entry for this particular task that's over budget, it's going to give you a yellow warning saying you're over budget on this task, but it will still allow you to create that time entry. Excuse me. When we assign professionals to it, if I assign, say, Dennis Thurman to this task, now for him specifically, I could give him a budget amount of hours, fees, or expenses. And if you notice, it'll show me his normal professional rate, his default rate is $175 an hour. So if I budget, 1.5 hours to work on this task, it all creates automatically, this is the fee that, it'll equate. And then again, you can do the prevent exceeding hours and so on. So now you can save that budget. And you can see how you can eventually roll up and have a really good budget for this matter long before the work is ever done, because you've assigned the specific people you want to do the work. You've given them a specific amount of hours to do the work. You multiply it by their normal billable rate, and you have then a fee that eventually does get rolled up into a budget here, a professional plan task budget. See, and if you entered more and more of these, they would just keep adding it up. This is a great way, by the way, and I do a whole separate webinar on this. This is a great way if you're a firm that has been skittish or unsure of charging a flat fee and what amount you should charge. This is a great way to determine a flat fee. It doesn't have to even be in TimeSolv. Obviously, you guys all use TimeSolv, so it's easy to do. Lay out all the work you know is going to have to be done. Put an estimate together of how long it takes to accomplish each one of those tasks based on your past experience. This will automatically multiply it by your default rate that you have, or whatever rate you've applied for this particular matter. And that'll give you a budget that you could even present to your client. You could, you could see like, oh, hey, I know though that I can, and this is a good way to even see like, am I making enough money on this flat fee that I'm charging? Or have I been charging, would I position myself better? I've been charging $5,000 for this amount of work all along, because that's just sort of what I ballparked in my head. But when I put together the actual numbers of how much time I'm spending on stuff, it turns out that I'm really only doing about $4,000 worth of work. That's an extra $1,000 of income, essentially free income that I'm getting off of this work that I'm doing. That helps you in knowing, like, if I want to give a discount, what's your bottom rate discount you want to give to somebody, where you start essentially, eating into your own profits. You don't want to be doing that. So this is a great way to do that. But let's go back to the overall matter plan here. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm going to delete the, I need to unassign, I believe, the professional here. Yeah, because I had a budget in place. So let's delete this. There we go. And let's go back to our plan. Cancel that. Now I should be able to delete this, and then I'm going to delete our phase. Because what I want to show you here is the power of using templated matter plans. Once you've laid out an entire laundry list of different phases, I use that term, laundry list, the phases and tasks, you can save them as a template. And then you could create, on a new matter, create a matter plan from that template. So I already have some in place. So I'm going to click here where it says create from template. And I'm going to choose my family estate plan, for example. I hit save. Here's a plan that I already have laid out when I do estate work: will preparation, trust preparation, probate avoidance, and so on. I have the various tasks here set up. Now I can go ahead and just get into the details of the dates, the signing of the professionals, and so on. So again, once you have this in place, and again, once you've built all these out, you can just save as a template. You can also just rearrange these if you need to. Just click and drag and put trust documents in front of, and so on. So there's a way you can rearrange the order on this. Okay. Just so you're aware of that. Once these tasks are in place and they're assigned to professionals, your professionals are going to see that under their plan task to-dos. So they can come in here and see, like, let's say Benny Barnes can see a list of the plan tasks that he has set up, that has been assigned to him. And he can even make those time entries right from here. Boom, 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 make that time entry here. From the time entry screen, you all may have noticed there's a plan task to do tab right here, or link. If you click on that, same thing. It's going to show for me, Scott Laidlaw here, here's all of the various tasks that have been assigned to me. And I can do it by open, by past due. I can search for it. But if I click one, it's going to automatically pre-populate my time entry field. And so then when they get completed, they'll go ahead and mark off completed, and they can go back then, and you can see whoever's managing this. So if I do, let's go find our original matter, June 2019 matter. By the way, when you're looking at your list of clients and matters, you may have noticed if you see this little sort of a calendar icon, this means there's a matter plan that's created, and you can click on that little icon and go directly to the matter plan. So once these have been marked as completed, you have a great idea of how far along you are. You can set, like I said, dependencies. So you could say that this task depends on these other tasks being completed, and so on and so forth. So it is a really powerful way to lay out the work ahead of time using TimeSolv. And then the beauty, again, is that you can track all of this work in real time as you're making time entries. Because for any firm that is presenting a flat fee or a fixed fee, I hope that you're still tracking time for that work. So you have a clear understanding, am I making money or not making money on that flat fee that I charged? And here's how you can do it in TimeSolv ahead of time. To lay out your budgeted hours for all the tasks you need to work on for that flat fee you've quoted. And then again, track it in real time, adjust as needed in the future. Go back and look at these older plans and see how they did. Okay, so that is essentially how you go about doing your matter planning. And then you can get pretty deep and robust with even the budgeting of that, where if you aren't assigning it to professionals, you can just have a budget by the entire task itself. So you could say, I'm not even going to assign this to anybody, but just for gathering family info, and this is what I mentioned before, you could say, I'm only going to budget 10 hours to do our gathering family info. I can then look and see, once I've done this budgeting, I can go in and see like what time and expense entries have been created so far against this task. Obviously, there's none right now, but this is where you could do all of the management of your plan. So, and then save it as a template as needed. Okay, I see a couple of people have dropped off. I know we're running up, we're almost 45 minutes in. That is our last tip of the week. So do we have any questions at this point in time that people want to ask me about any of the 4 topics that we covered today? Please feel free to throw those out. I'll go back up to our, remember we talked about attaching receipts. We talked about how to customize invoice appearance, avoiding the duplication of contacts, and then the matter planning. You can use that little Q&A icon on your screen to ask a question. Well, I don't see any that are coming in here. I just want to remind everybody as well, for any questions that you do have about anything with TimeSolv, you can always contact us at support@timesolv.com. There is our 1-800 number, 800-715-1284. You can also, if you go to timesolv.com, you can do a live chat with one of our representatives who will be more than happy to answer questions for you. So I didn't see any that came in, any questions. So I'm assuming that everyone was just blown away by the information that I presented, and there's no questions to be had. So I want to thank everyone for joining me for today's webinar. It is recorded, and I will be sending out a link to the recording once that has been processed, and you'll be able to go back to this information at your leisure. So unless anybody has any other questions, I do hope you all have a great rest of the week, a great month of June, and you are enjoying your summer no matter where you are. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day.